featuring stories from the leaders in venture capital. This is Venture Capital Radio with Shannon Pearson on AM 650.
All right, thanks for tuning in to Venture Capital Radio. This is Shannon, and I am joined in the studio by Dave Yeager, and he is an associate with Progressive Investor Relations and also president and head writer to something called the Venture Report. And the Venture Report brings its readers an in-depth analysis of high-quality investment opportunities. We're going to get into a little bit more detail about that. So, Dave, thanks for joining me in the studio.
Thanks for having me, Shannon.
Well, there's a lot of information out there for just in general. I mean, investors for sure. So what made you want to create something information-based to send out to readers when there is so much out there already?
Well, most of it is driven by need. I mean, you're right. There's a lot of information out there, but there's also a lot of junior resource companies out there. And
very true.
And so these companies, they find it very hard to differentiate themselves. Lots of times, their news releases, they get mixed up in these big scientific news releases that for your average retail investor, it's very hard to decipher what's actually going on in the company. So working in the investor relations sector for the last 4 years, we just saw an opportunity to sort of elaborate on it. And our investor list, it's such that these are opt-in investors, so they want our material, which is very important. They've come to our website and signed up, or we've talked to them on the telephone and opted in. So these people are looking for information in the junior resource sector, and we try and provide the best that we can for that to help them make their investment decisions.
So I think you bring up a good point. You say opt-in, so that means that somebody goes to theventurereport.com and there's something on the right-hand side that says your name, your email, and you can sign up. And so they're choosing to receive this information.
Exactly. Okay. And, the information that we send out are in-depth reports on our client companies that really try and paint the entire picture of what's going on with said company.
Okay.
From all the way from the management to where they're exploring to the sector that they're in. And I really try and focus on short-term catalysts of these companies. A lot of junior resource investors, they want to know when something's going to be good.
Yeah.
And, you don't want to be holding on to your stocks for 2 years waiting for something to happen. So I try and really let people know when they can expect, share prices to move, or what important information is coming out in the near future. So you get a good overview of the past of the company, but you get also a good overview of what's coming up for them in the future.
Which is actually a unique space to be in for you, because you're not necessarily a representative of a company. So you're able to do that somewhat forecast, best guess in the future. This is what it could look like, and here's a timeline.
Oh, for sure. And I work closely with management of my client companies that I write up to make sure that what they feel is going to be coming out about their company is best represented, because a lot of times in their official news releases, they can't prognosticate about exactly what's going to happen.
No.
So I can sort of elaborate on what they hope is going to happen. Obviously, it's the venture exploration game, so not everything comes true. But if people have a good idea of best case scenario, they can keep in mind what the worst case scenario would be and make an informed decision about whether or not they want to get involved.
And would you say that your venture report is much more layman terms as opposed to the scientific focus that you talked about?
I really try and keep it that way.
Okay.
My father's a geologist, so I grew up getting inundated with scientific information, and I've sort of grown a talent of deciphering that into more of a layman's terms.
Nice.
I find your average retail investor, they're not geologists, they're not mining engineers, they're
No.
people that want to make money in the stock market. So I try and decipher a story down, kind of boil it down to its roots, and obviously some scientific information is involved, but really the story of the company is what I try and focus on.
Okay. And, there's, like I said, there's a lot of newsletters out there. What do you think would be the key differentiator between the Venture Report and a lot of those other newsletter writers that are out there?
I think it's a fresh look. We started this because we saw a need in terms of the story that we want to get it across in a timely manner. Also, I have an immense amount of respect for a lot of the newsletter writers out there, but most of them are in their 50s, 60s, or 70s. They've been doing it for a long time, but they're not going to be around forever. So it's it's a fairly new company, and we saw, in the next 5 to 10 years in this space, a real opportunity to grow, and so that's sort of why we got involved.
And I also like the fact that you're on Twitter, and that's not something that a lot of those, shall we call them experienced newsletter writers, are really dialed into, is the social media side of things.
Of course, and more and more people are realizing that you have to be. I'm lucky because I've sort of grown up in the generation where it's second nature to me, and most of them are on it now. But going forward, kind of embracing those new technologies is something that's very important. Up-to-date news is so important in the investment game anyway. That it's really helpful to have a social media account where people, the social media community that's circled around investment is massive. And so there's a lot of exposure you can gain through that, which is important.
Well, and you need to position yourself with those people that are also well positioned in social media, which I from watching you on Twitter, that's definitely what's happened and is continuing to grow. So for anybody that's listening, you can follow them on Twitter at venture_report. And also your website, which I've spent quite a bit of time on, it holds a lot of information.
Well, certainly all of our old reports are archived there. It's something that it works for us because we like to retailers go back and look at everybody we've written up in the past and get a good idea of sort of this type of information that we bring to market, and it's all there to read.
Well, and the other thing I want to bring up is the fact that you are an associate with Progressive Investor Relations, and that's really where you spent a lot of your time.
Yeah, that's where I got my start in the business about 4.5 years ago now. Just as I was working, calling on certain companies, our client companies that go out, and so they've been great to me, and they're a great investor relations company in the industry.
You're listening to Venture Capital Radio on AM 650. This is Shannon, and I'm talking to Dave Yeager, who is the president and head writer for something called the Venture Report. And part of this conversation is all about the sharing of information and how important that is for investors, but also for the companies. And Dave, we were talking a little bit about the fact that companies, they disseminate their news, and their news can be quite technical. So breaking it down to really information that's going to mean something to an investor, not necessarily leave out the important information, but not making it so scientific that it's tough to really sink your teeth into. So for these companies that want to get mention on the Venture Report, how can they go about getting in front of you?
Well, contacting me easily through the website or through the Twitter account or whatnot. It's fairly easy. The big thing for these companies is there's so many people in the sector. We distribute to an email list of 52,000 people that look at the report. So for them to increase their audience, it's a great way. Also, we provide a copy of the report for them to disseminate how they want. So they have an internal investor list that they're trying to keep up to date. They can distribute to that, use print materials for trade shows and whatnot. So it gives them sort of a third party way to sort of get the outlook of the company going forward. And it's very hard, like you said, in these news releases, they're very, very scientific. And not only that, a lot of these companies come out with 15, 20 of these news releases a year. So to be able for me to search through it all, which is my job, I get to search through it all, pick out the pertinent information, boil it down to what your average retail investor or broker or somebody interested in the industry can read and understand. They don't have time to do that. They're more concerned with searching for new discoveries or
running their company,
developing their discoveries they already have. Exactly. So, that's my job, and that's what I provide to them.
So you become somewhat of a partner to these companies.
Ideally, it's one of those things I like to build long-term relationships because, as companies progress, that's where the interesting things come in. You go from drilling to discovery to, development, to takeout or, into production. And, to build along with them is a very interesting way to do things.
Are you focusing on any one sector with the Venture Report, or is it pretty much...
My skill set allows me to sort of do multiple sectors. I've focused mainly on the venture exchange because it's very hard for these companies to get coverage from analysts, say at brokerage houses and whatnot. Once you have a comprehensive analyst report from a brokerage house, you have a lot of information there. But for these junior companies, they're just too small for brokerage houses to focus on, and investor analyst firms to do that. So I've really focused on the smaller side of things thus far, but I'm open to anything.
Well, and I think that's one of the beauties about venture capital on whole is that we have to be flexible. You have to adapt to whatever the opportunity is in front of you. So I really like the Venture Report. I think it's something that is a little bit different way of creating a newsletter because you are definitely front and center on the social media side of things as well. So that being said, are there any plans moving forward with the Venture Report in terms of other services that you might be offering to your clients?
We're always looking at growing. One thing that we've looked at is sort of taking a more market outlook on things, with a number of companies sponsoring reports in terms of, you get 5 or 6 companies in a certain sector or section, region of Canada or whatever, and bundling up like that. But there's all sorts of ways. We're a small enough company that we're extremely flexible, and always looking to grow. So the opportunities are endless.
And like you say, it's all about the relationships.
Well, exactly, and the more that we can build them with groups, not even just individual companies, is always a great thing too.
Excellent. Well, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing the Venture Report with me on Venture Capital Radio. We have something in common in the name.
That's right.
But the focus is excellent because you're doing in the written word what I like to do in conversation and on video. So, I look forward to continuing the conversation with you and watching the Venture Report grow. So I want to remind everybody that to learn more information about the Venture Report, go to theventurereport.com. You can also follow David on Twitter at venture_report. Make sure you get that underscore in there. I'm sure it's missed quite often, isn't it?
Yeah, I imagine.
But Dave, thank you so much for coming in. It was a pleasure to talk to you, and we'll keep our eye on you and what you're writing on the Venture Report.
Excellent. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks.
Canada's only weekly radio show on venture capital. This is Venture Capital Radio with Shannon Pearson on AM 650.